It's not very often you have a fight that feels like a true 50-50 going into it, and one that has this much magnitude, like the one with Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev next weekend at UFC 322. And Islam, he could be on top of the sport. He could be establishing himself as the GOAT of the sport with a win over JDM in many people's eyes. And JDM, for him, he could be on his way to being one of the welterweight greats if he gets a win over Islam Makhachev in his first title defense. There is so much legacy on the line in this fight. And today I'm going to be breaking down who I'm picking in this fight and why I'm picking them. And I'm going to be looking beyond just the simple striker versus grappler dynamic and looking at its skill versus skill. It goes beyond that. I'm going to be breaking down how their styles clash, what they both do well when it comes to the fine details, and who I think has the edge in those moments. So if you read the title, I'll go ahead and tell you I am picking Jack Della Maddalena. That's not a surprise. I think he's going to get this one done. So I'll start with him, and I'm going to get into some of his strengths. We'll get into distance management. His jabs, they are money. He is really good with his jab. He's really good at popping it out there to keep distance between him and his opponents. He also really well utilizes the jab to the body, and he also has a habit of when he throws a jab, he ducks down low. So if someone tries to time it, slip under it, and shoot a takedown, he's able to meet them low and stop the takedown. In his fight with Gilbert Burns, about a minute in, he threw a jab and he got parried and he got taken down because of it. Gilbert slipped under it, got the takedown. In his Bilal fight, we saw he improved on that and he started throwing the jab and going down low to meet Bilal low in case he shot a takedown. And I want to say he held Bilal to one takedown on 9 attempts, if I'm not mistaken, in that fight. I don't have the stats exactly memorized, but I think it was something like that. So we saw great changes in his takedown defense between those two fights. He also utilizes teep kicks really well. That's something he does well, and I think that's going to be important against Islam Makhachev, who we've seen slow down later in fights, like in Dustin Poirier, like in Alexander Volkanovski. In fights like those, especially where he's striking for a lot of the fight, he tends to slow down a little bit later. So going to those teep kicks, hitting him in the solar plexus, wearing down on that gas tank, I think it's going to serve him well in this fight. He also likes to feint uppercuts a lot. Early on in that Bilal fight, he was showing Bilal the uppercut from a distance just in case he was ready to shoot. He was showing them that just so he knew if he did, he would run right into that uppercut. And he also does the same with knees. So that's something that JDM does really well, is the distance management. He also does a good job backing out of range whenever someone else is throwing shots. He just effortlessly glides out of range. It's really impressive how he's able to do that. Another thing, he is always in flow state, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, from start to finish in all of his fights, he looks like he is just flowing. He is a very cerebral fighter. Everything's very calculated, and everything's thrown with intent. He can fight out of both stances, and he does that really well. You'll often see him switch stance and then pop a jab out there at the same time. He's able to do so much so effortlessly. His combinations too. Oh my God, especially when he gets someone hurt, they're ruthless. He goes up top, down low, body, head, over and over and over. And he strings together combinations so well. It's unlike anyone I've ever seen, other than Ilya. I would say him and Ilya, they're probably, in my opinion, the two best boxers in the UFC. His head movement is also so good. We saw it was levels better than we've seen before in the Bilal Muhammad fight. That was the best head movement I've seen from Jack Della Maddalena. It was very, very impressive. And like his coach said, going into round 5 against Bilal, just keep pinging the cunt. He pings guys and he moves. He sticks and moves, pops a jab out there and gets out of the way. He does a really good job circling away from guys. Everything he does just looks effortless and just looks easy when he's out there, and it looks so smooth. His striking is it's phenomenal. I think he's a top 5 striker in the UFC. Another thing to consider with this, his defense and his chin are both very good. His head movement, like I mentioned on the last slide, he has elite head movement. It looked on another level in that Bilal fight. It was so hard for Bilal to land clean on him. Like I mentioned earlier, he slides out of the range of shots really well. He just seems to glide on his feet, get out of the way of shots, and yeah, anytime he's ducking too, he keeps his hands up to block head kicks. The only time I've ever really seen him even slightly hurt in a fight, and he was just off balance for a slight moment, was against Gilbert Burns when Gilbert landed that big overhand, but he was immediately fine after that. So we've seen how good his chin is. He hasn't really been hurting much in his career. And he does well at circling out. He does well at circling out. I said that wrong on my slide here, but he does a good job at circling out, not getting backed up against the cage. And if he does get backed up against the cage, his defense in the pocket is really good too, and he finds the right time to counter. Overall, he's a very defensively sound fighter, and he does a good job of avoiding getting hit with big shots. So this is the big one when it comes to this fight is the counter grappling. Like I mentioned earlier, with he'll duck down after throwing the jab to meet someone low. He also keeps his hands pretty low to be ready to get those underhooks in if someone shoots out in the open. And yeah, he drops his level after shots to prepare for takedowns, like I mentioned earlier. And in the clinch, he does a really good job at reversing position, ending up on the outside and avoiding getting thrown down to the ground, which is where Islam Makhachev a lot of times finds his takedowns is in the clinch. So JDM has really good clinch work. He's often able to reverse position. There was even a clip where, and I'm not going to show it in here because of copyright. I have some screenshots I'll show for the counter grappling session or section. That's not one of them, but there was a moment in this fight with Gilbert Burns where he reversed position in the clinch. He hit like a hip toss on Gilbert Burns, and as Gilbert was coming up, he cracked him with a big knee on the way up, and it was kind of foreshadowing to what would happen later on in the fight. So his counter grappling is elite, and I have to do 2 slides because of how much good I have to say about his counter grappling. He does a really good job at in recent times. Now I know the Ramazan Emeev fight, he ended up in an anaconda choke that was pretty deep, and that is something to worry about because Islam Makhachev is a very dangerous submission artist. But he does a good job as of recent of avoiding dangerous positions. There was a moment in his fight with Gilbert Burns, and I believe I'll show it next, where he gets swept out and taken down, and instead of shooting directly on the hips to get back to his knees and then build up, he rolls off to the side and rolls with Gilbert Burns and gets up that way. And that takes me down to my next point too. He rolls really well with opponents. He does a good job at carrying their weight and using that momentum to roll with them and end up in positions where he can get back to his feet and break free from them. And then we saw in round 5 with his fight against Bilal the way he was able to get leverage from bottom position when Bilal was in half guard. He's able to get those legs up for a second and explode up with his hips and turn Bilal over and get back up to his feet and go on to win that fight. It was next level stuff. You don't see guys with that much heart alone to explode up from bottom, but also to be able to do that against a guy who's so heavy on top like Bilal. It was really impressive stuff. Now, I want to show a couple moments from the Gilbert Burns fight real quick here. And I have screenshots, so I'm going to play it like frame by frame so I don't get copyrighted. But you can see this is early on in round 2. Gilbert Burns shoots a single leg. He gets it, lifts up the leg, and then you can see he's going to sweep out that back leg with his own right leg. And he gets JDM down here. And at this point, the takedown's pretty much done. This was perfectly done from Gilbert Burns to wrap up that leg and sweep out the back leg. But you can see JDM ends up working his way under Gilbert Burns and getting around to that right leg. And he uses that to just roll and carry Gilbert Burns' weight and end up almost on a single leg of his own. Now you can see Gilbert still has him in kind of a cradle position here, but about 10 seconds later, he's able to break free and he ends up against the cage. And at this point, he's able to get free and start striking on the feet again. He does this so well, these rolls. And I think a lot of it has to do with training with Craig Jones. I think he's picking up a lot from Craig Jones. Volkanovski did as well in his fight with Islam Makhachev. And we saw how good Volk did in the counter grappling in his first fight with Islam. So, and also JDM, of course, he's training with Volk for this training camp as well. Someone who has a lot of experience in the cage with Islam, who knows what Islam does well. And he's able to pick up on that. And I think he's going to carry that into this fight and know what works, know what doesn't work. So here's another moment. This is from round 1 of that Gilbert Burns fight, about a minute in. You can see JDM throws a jab, and Gilbert parries it. He slips under the jab, shoots a takedown. Same strategy. Gets a single leg and sweeps out that back leg. And he gets JDM down. And now this is that moment I was talking about where JDM gets taken down. He's on his ass right here. But instead, where most guys would get to their knees and try and shoot to the hips so that they can build their way back up, JDM instead rolls off to the side. And I'll show you why this is so important. Oh, I'm not going to show you. I'll tell you. The Darce choke of Islam Makhachev. We saw it against Renato Moicano when Moicano tried to get back up to his feet, shot it on Islam's hips, ended up in a Darce choke, got subbed out in the first round of that fight. And we also saw Dustin Poirier got subbed by that Darce choke from Islam Makhachev. So we know how dangerous that Darce choke is. And JDM, instead of shooting into the hips to try and get back up, he rolls off to the side and immediately grabs the leg. That's another thing about JDM too that I didn't have written down, is he is always active in the grappling. He's never just stalling out any position, never just trying to to buy out some time to recover or anything. He's always moving to get back up to his feet, always trying to grab a limb to get leverage to explode up from bottom position. And this shows it here too. He gets that right leg of Gilbert Burns, he gathers it, and he rolls. Rolls over to here, and ends up in this position, where from here he's able to get to his knees, and then build back up to his feet. And then I think they ended up against the cage at some point here, and he's able to break free. That's when they ended up in the clinch, and then back to striking. So JDM just does such a good job with rolling with opponents and also keeping himself out of dangerous positions. He does that extremely well. Now, oh, almost skipped ahead. Now, another thing I wanted to touch on is his toughness, because he has a level of toughness that you just don't see very often. And I don't have any fancy words to describe it or anything. It's just plain and simple. Round 5 versus Bilal. We saw him explode up from bottom position, get back up to the feet, and go win that round to win the fight. I had him winning 4-1 in that fight, but two of the scorecards had it 48-47. So if he didn't do that, and he just laid on bottom position like a lot of guys would have, he would have lost that fight by split decision. So, and then another one, round 3 versus Gilbert Burns. I had that fight going 1-1 into round 3, and had he not gotten the finish, I probably would have gone to Burns off of control time. But even with a broken arm, he's able to get back up to his feet, land that big knee, and go on to finish the fight. Just next level toughness, and he just has a will to win and not quit that you don't see very often. Now, next, he fights well in both directions. So this is on the front foot and the back foot alike. He's elite in both areas. He has such a nice pullback counter. We saw it in the Pete Rodriguez fight. Steps back, fires that left hand in there, knocks him out with it. We also saw it against Bilal, where Bilal was rushing in, and he had no problem weaving out the way of shots and landed some huge counter shots of his own in the pocket. I mean, just really nasty stuff. If you go back and watch that fight, there were so many times, especially late when Bilal started to get desperate, that when he would blitz in, JDM would weave out the way of shots and land a big one back of his own and hurt Bilal. His pocket boxing, it's so good. He is so dangerous in the pocket. It's not somewhere where you can afford to be with him. And then if you get shelled up against the cage against JDM, where you have your hands up over your head, you're trying to just survive for a moment, he's going to end the fight there. He's going to end the fight there because he's going to string together combinations, body, head, upstairs, and he is going to rip those shots with nasty intent, and he's probably going to put you out. I mean, he hurt Gilbert Burns in that situation a lot, and Burns is a tough dude, and he really hurt him in those situations. So if at any point Islam ends up backed up against the cage, and I especially worry about that late in the fight where we've seen him start to slow down, it's a dangerous position to be in front of Jack Della Maddalena. Now, I have to touch on the weaknesses. So I showed you in both of those clips against Gilbert Burns that he is susceptible to getting swept, those sweeps where someone gets a single leg on him and they sweep out the back leg and take him down. That does concern me because Islam Makhachev, he has that Sambo background, so he's very good at sweeps, he's very good at throws. Now, both of those takedowns in the Burns clips, they happened out in the open, where Islam Makhachev, he isn't the best at getting takedowns out in the open. He more works against the cage to get his takedowns, but still, he's got to be careful about this to not be, getting swept down to the ground too much. Another weakness of him, he has a habit of ducking off to the side. Now, I mentioned this a bit of a good thing, where he throws a jab and he gets down low to meet anybody low to defend the takedown. However, there is times where he'll throw the jab out there and he'll duck down to the side. And I worry about that, especially if he's fighting in southpaw, because he can fight in both stances. So there will be times where he's in orthodox, there will be times when he's in southpaw. If he's in southpaw, he can't afford to throw that jab and then duck off to the side, because he'll be ducking right into Islam Makhachev's rear leg head kick. And then we know how dangerous that is. He KO'd my sweet Volk that way. So he can't afford to throw that jab and then duck off to the right, or else he's going to run straight into that head kick. Now, if he's fighting out of orthodox, I think he'll be fine to do it, because Islam Makhachev, he's not moving like Umar Nurmagomedov or John Pork, a couple of those guys at Team Habib, where he's able to fling up those really snappy head kicks off the lead leg. He's not going to be able to do that. So I don't think he'll have a problem with throwing the jab in orthodox and then going down, but he's got to be careful about doing that when he's fighting out of southpaw. And the last one, he has been in dangerous positions before where he could have been subbed. I think back to that Ameev fight where he was caught in that anaconda choke. Now, he did fight out of it and get a finish like a minute later. but it's something to consider because when Islam Makhachev latches up a Darce choke, he finishes fights. It's how it is. It's a position you cannot be afford to be in against Islam. So with all that said, I will switch over to Islam now. I'll talk about some of his strengths, and we'll start with clinch work. He's a really, really good Thai clinch. Now, this could work in his favor, and it could work against him in some instances because we saw in the Dustin Poirier fight, he had that Thai clinch, and Poirier just started ripping body shots, and you can't really afford to do that against JDM. But Islam does have a very good Thai clinch, and he's able to land big knees in close because of it. He'll land them to the body, and then he'll go upstairs with them. Just really, really devastating knees. And yeah, he's just really, really dangerous in the clinch. And he often gets a lot of his takedowns from here against the cage. He'll get you to the clinch. He'll have you backed up against the cage, and you'll hit a throw or he'll hit a sweep from that position. He's really good at getting his takedowns from the clinch. So that's something that JDM is going to have to watch out for. Takedowns against the fence. This is a big, strong point for him. Like I mentioned, his judo throws and his sweeps are both really good. When he gets you backed up against the fence, it's really hard to stuff a takedown against him. Now, Volk did it well, but not many other guys have had success at defending the takedown when they're backed up against the cage against Islam. So that's not a position where I want to see JDM in. He can't be fighting. He could fight on the back foot. He can afford to in this fight, but he can't be backed up against the cage too much, or else Islam, he's going to find those moments where he can use big flurries of punches and he can get inside and get the takedown from there. He did it against Volk. He did it against Poirier, where he's throwing a bunch of punches, a three-punch combination, and he's immediately shooting down to the hips, and he's getting him down that way. So that's something that JDM's going to have to be wary of. He's going to have to circle out quite a bit and not allow himself to be backed up right against the fence. Striking defense. This is another thing that Islam is top notch at. This is one of the best aspects of his game, and what allows him to survive on the feet for these prolonged exchanges against such elite fighters or elite strikers like Volkanovski, like Charles Oliveira, like Dustin Poirier. He's so good at sliding out of the range and avoiding big strikes. He's very good at it. He does a good job. Similarly to what JDM does well, he just kind of glides out of range, avoids getting hit with big shots. He does that really well. His head movement is also it's top notch. His head movement and his recent fights has been so good, and he's dangerous in the pocket with it because he can avoid those big strikes. He can roll with punches, and he can land back some big ones of his own. He looks a little bit clunky on the feet at times, but it's really effective, and he's so good at not getting hit. I think at lightweight, amongst all the lightweight fighters, I think he had one of the lowest strike percentage in terms of getting hit. He's very good at avoiding getting hit, and he's always moving too. He's never a stationary target, which guys like Bilal, where he's kind of moving forward or he's kind of just standing still on the back foot, he's not going to be like that, like Bilal was against JDM. He's always going to be moving. He's going to be circling. He's going to be, trying to get in on the hips. Just keep moving. He always does that. So it's going to be a little bit harder for JDM to land clean on him. Now, I do think there's going to be opportunities for JDM to land that lead hook to the body that he likes to throw whenever Islam is circling out. But still, it's going to make it so that he's a little bit of a harder target to hit compared to some other fighters he's fought. Another thing that Islam is great at is grappling control. And this is another thing that JDM has not faced quite at this level. He is so good at getting to the back. He is so quick at it too. When he gets someone down, when he gets the body lock and he drags someone down to the ground, he is so quick at jumping onto that back and getting both hooks in. And from there, it's so hard to get out of that, especially when he gets the body triangle in. When he gets that body triangle in, it's so tight and it's almost impossible to get out of. In the Volkanovski fight in round 4, Islam had his back for the entire round and kept him in that body triangle. And that's someone who does really well with the scrambles and who showed that earlier in the fight. He wasn't able to get out of that body triangle and he lost a round because of that. So that's something that JDM's got to be very wary of. And when he's on the ground, when he's in these dominant positions, he's always threatening submissions or he's always trying to land big shots. When he's on the back, he's always fighting the hands. He's always looking to get an arm, just not even necessarily get a rear naked choke in, just get it kind of around the neck so he's making the fighter worry about the submission. That and he's landing big shots to the head, big shots to the body when he's on the back. He's just always keeping busy, and it just makes his control on the ground that much more smothering. So, and then of course, no doubt about this one, his submissions. He has an incredible Darce choke. We saw it in the Poirier fight. He was able to grab that leg and drag him down to the mat. I don't even know the name of that takedown, what that was called, but he was able to get one leg singled out, and as soon as Poirier loaded up for a strike, he dragged him down to the mat, and from there he was able to latch up a Darce choke and finish the fight. And that fight against Moicano, where Moicano was trying to scramble up to his feet, that's something that I've been thinking about nonstop when it comes to this JDM fight. Is he caught Moicano up in that Darce choke during a scramble? Moicano was trying to get back up to his feet. He shot in on Islam's hips to try and get to his knees and build back up, and he ended up getting it stuffed, of course, and then Islam locked up that Darce choke and he subbed him very quick. So his Darce choke, once he gets you in, it's devastating. It is very tight, and even the Poirier fight, I mean, he tapped very quick and he still went out from it. I believe he was still out on the ground from that choke, really fast. Like, he put him out quick. He also has a really good Kimura, and the one with Dan Hooker is one that I mentioned here. But he also does a really good job at using that Kimura just to threaten it, just to end up in more dominant position. He can use it when he's on top to single out that arm and to make the fighter worry about that, so he can end up in a more dominant position. Just really good at using different submissions to advance position, but also to finish fights. Now, his weaknesses. We're gonna get into this, and this first one is a big one when it comes to this fight, because I think it's either going to go to a decision, or I think it's going to be a late finish for Jack Della Maddalena, and this would be the reason why. He tends to slow down late. He was getting busted up by that jab against Dustin Poirier, and in round 5 of that fight, or round 4 of that fight, sorry. Round 5 is when he got the finish, but round 4, he was really slowing down, and Poirier was starting to land a lot of big combinations on him. He was starting to break him a little bit. Now, obviously, Islam was able to weather that and get through it, but that's a 2024 version to Dustin Poirier. If he's doing that in round 4, that worries me for when you're going up against JDM, who looks like he's at the peak of his career right now. Another thing, that he struggles to get takedowns out in the open. He's not known for getting that. Now, I know we mentioned that one about Poirier, which was out in the open, but for a lot of that fight, he was trying and failing to get takedowns in the open in any method. When he tried to sweep, he couldn't get it. When he tried, he doesn't really try blasting double legs out in the open, so that's not something JDM's going to have to worry about. He likes to try and single out one of those legs and go for the sweep. So if Poirier is able to do it, if he's able to survive those takedown attempts out in the open with his false hip and being, I think, 1 fight or 2 fight removed from retirement, yeah, I trust that the JDM is going to be able to survive out in the open with those takedown attempts. The jab, he's getting busted up in a lot of his fights by the jab, and that's something I worry about because, as I mentioned earlier, JDM has a killer jab. He's so good at popping it out there, and he bloodied up Bilal Muhammad with it. I think he's going to be able to land it a lot on Islam Makhachev, like we've seen other opponents do to Islam. So I worry about that for Islam, is he's going to get tagged up by that jab a lot. And I also worry about it busting up his face, because he's shown a lot of visible damage. He was all bloodied up against Poirier, all bloodied up against Volkanovski. There's other fights where he's gotten cuts and bruises and swollen eyes and stuff. So I do worry that that's going to add up throughout the fight, and it's going to contribute to him slowing down. And also, it's not a good visual for the judges, him having, a busted up face. And then this isn't too important, but he doesn't really defend low kicks. I don't really see him check a whole lot of low kicks or anything. And JDM has a pretty nice low kick. It's not something that I think is going to be debilitating for Islam or anything, but it is something to consider. So that's all I have for the breakdown, the in-depth breakdown of this fight. I am going with Jack Della Maddalena, and I think I'm going to go with him getting this one done by late finish. I could also see him getting this one done by like a 49-46 decision. Either way, I think he's going to be too much for Islam on the feet. I think he's going to pose a lot of problems for him. And I think when it comes to the ground game, I think he's going to scramble really well and survive being on the ground. I do worry about him potentially getting caught up in a submission early when they're dry, but I think as the fight goes on and both of them are sweaty, especially when JDM's slippery and hard to keep control of for Islam, I think he's going to be able to get back up from being on the ground. And I think he's going to build into this fight, and I think he's going to build into a late rounds TKO against the fence, I'll say. Strings together a big combination, body, headshot, and Islam kind of goes down in a heap, covering up, and that's the fight. That's my prediction. I'll go round 4 to be specific, but either way, this is a sick fight. I'm very pumped for it. So much legacy on the line, such an entertaining fight, and yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.